On Living in the United States by H. L. Mencken, 1880 to 1956. Published in The Nation, December 7th, 1921. It is one of my firmest and most sacred beliefs, reached after due prayer, that the government of the United States, in both its legislative and its executive arms, is corrupt, ignorant, incompetent, and disgusting. And from this judgment I exempt no more than 20 lawmakers, and no more than 20 executioners of their laws. It is a belief no less piously cherished that the administration of justice in the Republic is stupid, dishonest, and against all reason and equity. And from this judgment I accept no more than 20 judges. It is another that the foreign policy of the United States, its habitual manner of dealing with other nations, whether friends or foes, is hypocritical, disingenuous, knavish, and dishonorable, and from this judgment I consent to no exceptions whatsoever. And it is yet another that the American people, taking them by and large, are the most timorous, snivelling, poltroonish, ignominious mob of serfs and goose-steppers ever gathered under one flag in Christendom since the fall of the Eastern Empire. Such is my unbreakable faith, held passionately since my nonage, and now growing stronger and stronger as I gradually disintegrate into my component carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, phosphorus, calcium, sodium, nitrogen, and iron. Yet here I am, a loyal American, even a chauvinist, paying taxes without complaint, obeying all laws that are physiologically obeyable, accepting all the duties and responsibilities of citizenship unprotestingly, investing the usufructs of my toil in the obligations of the government, contributing my mite toward the glory of the national arts and sciences, spurning all lures and even all invitations to get out and stay out. Here am I, a bachelor of 41, able to go wherever I please, and to stay as long as I please, remaining contentedly and even smugly beneath the folds of the stars and stripes. A better citizen, I dare say, and certainly a less mercurial and exigent one than thousands who hold the Honorable Warren Gamaliel Harding in superstitious devotion, and regard the Supreme Court of the United States as directly inspired by the Holy Spirit, and belong ardently to every Rotary Club, Ku Klux Klan, and Anti-Saloon League, and believe with the faith of little children that any one of our boys, taken at random, could dispose in a fair fight of 10 Englishmen, 20 Germans, 30 Frenchmen, or 50 Japanese. Well, why am I still here? In particular, why am I so complacent, perhaps even to the point of offensiveness, so free from indignation, so curiously happy? Why did I answer with only a few academic and polite hawks when Henry James, Ezra Pound, and Harold Stearns issued their successive calls to the native intelligentsia to flee the shambles, escape to fairer lands, throw off the curse forever? The answer is to be sought in the nature of happiness. To me, and I can only follow my own nose, it presents itself in an aspect that is tripartite. To be happy, one must be A. Well-fed, unhounded by sordid cares, at ease in Zion. B. Full of a comfortable feeling of superiority to the masses of one's fellow men. And C. Delicately and unceasingly amused according to one's taste. It is my contention that, if this definition be accepted, there is no country in the world wherein a man constituted as I am, a man of my peculiar weaknesses, vanities, appetites, and aversions, can be so happy as he can be in the United States. Going further, I lay down the doctrine that it is a sheer physical impossibility for such a man to live in the United States and not be happy. If he says he isn't, then he either lies or is insane. Here the business of getting a living is enormously easier than it is anywhere else in Christendom. So easy, in fact, that an educated and unsqueamish man who fails at it must actually make deliberate efforts to that end. Here the general average of intelligence, of knowledge, of competence, of self-respect, of honor is so low that any man who knows his trade, does not fear ghosts, believes in nothing that is palpably idiotic, and practices the common decencies, stands out as brilliantly as a wart on a bald head, and is thrown willy-nilly into a meager and exclusive aristocracy. And here, more than anywhere else in the world, the daily panorama of human existence, the unending procession of governmental extortions and chicaneries, of commercial brigandages and throat-slittings, of theological buffooneries, of aesthetic ribaldries, of legal swindles and harlotries, is so inordinately extravagant, so perfectly brought up to the highest conceivable amperage, that only the man who was born with a petrified diaphragm can fail to go to bed every night grinning from ear to ear, and awake every morning with the eager, unflagging expectations of a Sunday school superintendent touring the Paris peep shows. A certain sow of rhetoric is here. I yield to words as an evangelist yields to them, depicting the almost intolerable bliss of the New Jerusalem. But fundamentally, I am quite as sincere as he is. For example, in the matter of attaining to ease in Zion, of getting a fair share of the national swag, it seems to me that the only man who fails to do this in the United States is the man who is somehow stupid, perhaps not superficially, but certainly deep down. Either he is one who cripples himself imprudently, say by setting up a family before he can care for it, or by trusting too naively to the skill and decency of an employer, or by submitting his fortunes to the gross frauds and imbecilities of labor leaders. Or he is one who endeavors fatuously to sell something that no normal American wants. When I hear a professor of philosophy complain that his wife has eloped with a moving picture actor who can properly feed her, my natural sympathy for the man is greatly corrupted by contempt for his lack of sense. Would it be regarded as sane and laudable for a man to travel the Sudan trying to sell fountain pens, or Greenland offering to teach double-entry bookkeeping? Coming closer, would the judicious pity or laugh at a man who opened a shop for the sale of incunabula in Little Rock, Arkansas, or who demanded a living in McKeesport, Pennsylvania, on the ground that he was a first-rate conductor of grand opera? In precisely the same way, it seems to me to be nonsensical for a man to offer, generally, some commodity that only a few rare and dubious Americans want, and then weep because he is not patronized. One seeking to make a living in a country must pay due regard to the needs and tastes of that country. Here in the United States we have no jobs for Grand Dukes, and none for wirklich Geheimräte, and none for palace eunuchs, and none for masters of the buckhounds, and very few for contrapuntists, metaphysicians, astrophysicists, Assyriologists, grammarians, water-colorists, and epic poets. Why, then, practice such trades, that is, as trades? The man of independent means may venture into them prudently. It may even be argued that he performs a public service by adopting them. But the man who has a living to make is simply silly if he goes into them. Let him abandon the vain enterprise and go into the Chautauquas or the Uplift instead, as indeed thousands of Ph.D.s have already done. Let him bear in mind the fact that, whatever its neglect of the humanities and their monks, the Republic has never got half enough bond salesmen, quack doctors, ward politicians, phrenologists, evangelists, circus clowns, magicians, soldiers, farmers, popular songwriters, Chautauqua orators, bootleggers, policemen, detectives, spies, snoopers, and agents provocateurs. The rules are set. The discreet man observes them. Observing them, he is safe, in fair weather or foul. The boob is a bird that knows no closed season, and if he won't come down to Texas oil stock or a one-night cure for diabetes, he will always come down to inspiration and optimism, whether political, theological, pedagogical, literary, or economic. If it is thus easy to get money in the United States, given ordinary prudence and resourcefulness, it is equally easy to get balm for the ego, given ordinary dignity and decency. Simply to exist, indeed, on the plane of a civilized man is to attain to a distinction that should be enough for most of us. It is even likely to be too much, as the frequent challenges of the Ku Klux Klan, the American Legion, and other such patriotic societies testify. Here is a country in which all political thought and activity is concentrated upon the scramble for jobs. Go into politics, then, without seeking or wanting a job, and at once you are as conspicuous almost as the Cid was in Spain. Here is a country in which it is an axiom that a businessman shall be a member of the Rotary Club, an admirer of Charles M. Schwab, a reader of the Saturday Evening Post, and a golfer, in brief, a vegetable. Spend your hours of escape from Geschäft reading Remy de Gourmont and practicing the violoncello, and the local Sunday newspaper will infallibly find you out and hymn the marvel. Here is a land in which women rule and men are slaves. Train your women to get your slippers for you, and your ill fame will match Galileo's or Darwin's. Here is the paradise of Democrats, of backslappers. Maintain ordinary reserve, and you will arrest instant attention, and have your hand kissed by multitudes who, despite democracy, have all the inferior man's unquenchable thirst to worship superiors. Nowhere else on earth is superiority more facilely attained or more eagerly admitted. The most conspicuous and respected American in nearly every field of endeavor, saving only the purely commercial, I even exclude the financial and the manufacturing, is a man who would attract absolutely no attention in any other country. The leading American critic of literature, after 20 years of incessant exposition, has yet to make it clear what he is in favor of. The leading American musical director, if he went to Leipzig, would be put to polishing trombones. The chief living American military genius belongs to the Elks. The leading American philosopher, now dead with no successor, spent a lifetime erecting an epistemological defense for the national maxim, "I don't know nothing about, but I know what I like." The greatest statesman the United States has produced since Lincoln was fooled by Arthur James Balfour and miscalculated his public support by more than 5 million votes. I refrain from marshalling evidence that life in the United States offers the greatest show in the world. The proofs are too numerous and too insistent. We have clowns in constant practice among us who are as far above the clowns of any other great state as a Jack Dempsey is above a YMCA secretary, and not one, but whole herds of them. Human enterprises that, in all other countries, are resigned despairingly to an incurable dullness, things that seem devoid of exhilarating amusement by their very nature, are here lifted to such inordinate buffoonery that contemplating them tears the very midriff from its moorings. I cite one example, and pass on, the worship of God. Everywhere else on earth it is carried on in a solemn and dispiriting manner. In England, of course, the bishops are obscene, but the average man seldom gets a chance to see them. Now come home. Here We not only have bishops who are vastly more obscene than even the most gifted of the English bishops, we have also a great force of superlative specialists in ecclesiastical mountebankery, the Reverend Dr. Billy Sunday and his host of disciples. Every American town has one of its own, a holy clerk with such superb talent for introducing the arts of jazz into the salvation of the damned that his performance takes on all the gaudiness of a four-ring circus, and the bald announcement that he will raid hell on such and such a night is enough to empty all the town blind pigs and bordellos and pack his sanctuary to the doors. Personally, I have been overfed with such ribaldries, and prefer politics, patriotism, and the Ziegfeld follies. But within the limits of my prejudices, I have quite as much fun as you do, and a great deal more than any imaginable European. Lately, within the space of 2 weeks, I was torn with such mirth that I actually came down with a severe tetany. First, I read the returns of the New York municipal election. Then I made a tour of the New York cafes and observed the results of Prohibition. Then I went to Washington and viewed the triumphal arch erected in honor of the delegates to the Disarmament Conference, an exact replica of the facade of Mrs. Jack Johnson at the last inaugural ball. Then I passed the guards and heard Dr. Harding's opening address to the conference. And then, but to think of the appointment of young Teddy Roosevelt, Jr., an American naval expert, brings me even now to such hysterical snickers, such orgiastic and unhygienic cackles, that I put away the memory on the advice of my medical adviser. This episode, in fact, assaults me from two sides. Not only is it intrinsically almost beyond the grasp of the most cynical imagination, a feat of imbecility that lifts itself to truly epic heights, a masterpiece comparable to the Fifth Symphony, the Sistine frescoes, or the human eye. In addition, it is something more. It is a subtle and devastating attentat upon democracy, a proof that there is nothing, after all, in that superstition. We subscribe to the doctrine of human equality, and the Roosevelti reduce it to absurdity as brilliantly as the sons of Veit Bach. Where is your equal opportunity now? Here in this Eden of clowns, with the high rewards and usufructs of clowning theoretically open to every poor boy. Here, in the very citadel of freedom, we found and cherish a clown dynasty. Thank you for listening.